Good morning. This morning we're talking about noun-pronoun agreement. And I have a subtitle on here, who are we talking about? And the reason for that subtitle is that unless your pronouns in your writing agree with their antecedent noun, your reader is going to get misled and going to get confused during your writing about who are we talking about. So I have several goals for today's session. The first of those is that students will understand the importance of agreement between pronouns and the nouns they represent. And the second goal is that students will be able to perform the mechanics of matching a pronoun with the antecedent that it represents. And then third, that students will gain foundational writing skills, because the ability to have pronouns agree with their antecedent nouns is foundational to good writing. So I want to begin with some definitions. A noun is a person, place, or thing. A pronoun is a word that stands in the place of that noun. The antecedent is the noun that is replaced by the pronoun. And agreement means that the pronoun matches the antecedent in number, gender, and voice. So I said earlier, we want to know who we're talking about. In this sentence, Richard went to the store for Richard's mother, Lena. We're talking about Richard. Richard is the subject of the sentence. We can also write the sentence as Richard went to the store for his mother, Lena. In that sentence, his, the pronoun, refers clearly to Richard. We know who we're talking about. And we've written a sentence that is a little more readable. Instead of reading the word Richard twice, we're able to use the shorter word, the shorter pronoun, his, and make the writing a little bit more accessible to the reader. But what changed? Nothing changed in our sentence. Even though we replaced the second Richard with the pronoun his, we still know exactly who we're talking about in this sentence. Let's take this. Richard went to the store for Richard's mother, Lena. Lena made a list of the items that Lena needed during the next week. Lena taped the list of items to Lena's front door. Richard got out of Richard's car, walked to Lena's front door, removed the list, and put the list in Richard's pocket. Now, throughout that paragraph or sentences, you know who we're talking about, but it's awkward because we've named the names Richard, list, Lena too many times. Instead, we could write, Richard went to the store for his mother, Lena. Lena made a list of the items that she needed during the next week. She taped it to her front door. Richard got out of his car, walked to her front door, removed the list, and put it in his pocket. That is so much easier to read. So we needed the agreement between the pronoun and the antecedent in order to lead us through that paragraph, so that every time we used a pronoun, we still knew who was being talked about. Lucille, Joel, but first of all, the agreement depends on several things. And the first of these I'm going to talk about is agreement in number. And I'm talking about number in terms of only singular and plural, nothing more difficult than that. So let's take Lucille, Joel, and Charles love to go to the community center. Lucille, Joel, and Charles are the subjects of our sentence, and there are three of them, plural. So we use Lucille, Joel, and Charles as our plural antecedent, and we replace it with they. They love to go to the community center. We use a plural subject pronoun to replace Lucille, Joel, and Charles, and our reader knows exactly who went to the community center. Let's try this. In our agreement now, we are trying to replace a a pronoun for a noun based on gender, masculine or feminine. And we talk about Snowball. Snowball is the nicest cat. Now we know that Snowball is a boy cat, so we can easily refer to Snowball as he, and we write the sentence, he is the nicest cat. Snowball's a masculine antecedent. He is a masculine subject pronoun. Another basis for agreement between an antecedent and a pronoun is voice. We know that in writing, first person voice is the one speaking, second person voice is the one spoken to, and third person voice is the one spoken about. So let's take this. I love to go to my community center. I'm talking about me, so I'm speaking. So I use the pronoun I to refer to me. And I use the possessive pronoun my to modify and refer to my community center. Second person is you, the person spoken to. You love to go to your community center. I use the second person you to refer to you. And then I use the second person possessive pronoun your to refer to the community center. You love to go to your community center. There's agreement there. We know who we're talking about and we know whose community center we're talking about. If we're talking about a third person, someone who's maybe not in the room, we say he loves to go to his community center. He is a third person subject pronoun and his community center is a third person possessive pronoun. We can mix it up. You and I love to go to our community center. You are the second person pronoun. I'm the first person pronoun. And we love to go to the community center. We could also refer to you and I as we. We love to go to the community center. We're still using a first person voice pronoun to refer to the two of us because we are the ones speaking. Now we also have object pronouns, and we'll go back to Richard and Lena. Richard went to the store for his mother, Lena. Lena, in this case, is not the subject of this sentence. She is the object. So when we replace Lena with the pronoun, we're going to use a different pronoun. Richard went to the store for her. It's an object pronoun. And in the same way, Lena made a list being the antecedent object pronoun, and taped it, an object pronoun, to the door. Pronouns that show possession. There are two types of pronouns that show possession. The first of these is a possessive pronoun, and it takes the place of the noun that belongs to someone or something. There's a noun that belongs to me. This pronoun is going to take the place of that. A possessive adjective is a pronoun that shows possession. It may show ownership, and it describes the noun that as belonging to someone or something. The basketball belongs to me. I'm the object pronoun. I can also say the basketball is mine. It's taking the place of me. It's mine. It's a possessive pronoun. It, we're still referring to the basketball, is mine, is the possessive pronoun that agrees with the subject pronoun, it. Now this adjective pronoun, I, using it as a subject pronoun, love to go to my community center. Here, community center is it's mine, but I'm describing community center as my community center. So it's used as an adjective in that sentence, but it agrees with the subject pronoun I. Here we have plural subject pronoun, plural subject antecedent, Lucille, Joel, and Charles. love to go to their community center. In this case, it's a third person, and they love to go to their community center, their being an adjective pronoun that modifies community center, but refers back to the fact that Lucille, Joel, and Charles are three people, and it is plural. I put in here a little chart that you may refer back to that kind of organizes those subject pronouns, object pronouns, and possessive pronouns according to whether they're used as singular or plural. And that may be useful as you're becoming more and more familiar with the agreement that is needed to make your writing more clear. Now, we also have multiple antecedents, and I'm just going to give you here a little side rule, but it's an important rule because often we have multiple antecedents. And in this case, we're talking about two nouns that are joined by or nor in your sentence, but they themselves don't agree. The example here is either two women or one man paid for his purchase when the festival ended. We have two women and one man. Two women are two feminine people, plural. One man is a singular masculine noun. Which do we agree? How do we set up that agreement? We have chosen to use his purchase because it's closer in the sentence to one man, and it simply makes your writing more readable if you follow this rule. Neither Henry nor his sisters finished their meal. We have singular masculine Henry and sisters, which are plural feminine. We use their to just organize our sentence. It's closer to sisters in that sentence, so we use their as your pronoun to agree with sisters. Collective antecedents. A collective noun is one that can be used either as a singular or a plural, depending on how it's used. And here's where your context comes in. Whether or not you use the singular form of the pronoun to agree with your collective antecedent, or you use the plural form. Some of these nouns that set up this problem in writing are committee, group, family, church. In each of those words, there's context to determine whether or not we're really talking about a single unit. Are we talking about the members within that unit? So context is really important here. The committee conducted its business in secret. In this case, committee is referred to as a single unit, so we use its to agree with committee as the single unit. However, we can also write the committee cast their votes on the resolution, because we know that the committee is made up of individual members and each member has a vote. So we are writing this sentence using the plural pronoun to refer to the collective antecedent, which is used as plural in the context of this sentence. Here's a little chart for my next subject, which is common indefinite pronouns. Indefinite pronouns I think they're kind of hard because they are pronouns that are found in our written language and they refer to something definite, but what is definite is usually something that's not named. And look at those words: all, everything, somebody, something, anything, everyone. Within the context of that, a sentence that uses one of those words, there is meaning. We know who we're talking about. Let's say we're talking about all the states. Well, we know the names of those states. We could list 50 states, but we're not going to do that. We're going to say all, and that's what makes all a pronoun to represent Nebraska and Ohio and New York and Florida and all the states we could go through if we wanted to name each one. So in this when we use these indefinite pronouns, we may want to choose another pronoun to represent them, and it has to agree with them. It is in either singular or plural form. Indefinite pronouns can be antecedents. So here's an example of each. Each of the officials must add his or her signature to the petition. Remember, we talked about those collective pronouns, those collective nouns. In this case, the officials is a group, but it's a group of individuals. And we're talking about each one of those individuals. So each one adds his or her signature to the petition. Your context has told you that you're going to be using, you're going to be referring back to each as a singular pronoun. One of the women left her phone on the table. There was a whole group of women. They were in the room. They all left. One of them left her phone on the table. So when we're talking about her phone, we're choosing a pronoun that matches just one of those. So it's a singular pronoun. All of the students raised their hands. All of the students. There's an auditorium full of students, and they all raised their hands. We are going to refer to that as the collective all, and we are going to have them all raising their hands together with the plural pronoun. Each of the students raised his or her hand. When you use each instead of all, now you're talking about each one of them, and we're talking about each hand, his or her, as a singular pronoun to agree with each. So again, who are we talking about? Each of the officials must add his or her signature to the petition, each being singular, which is agreed with by his or her singular signature. One of the women left her phone on the table. One out of the group. Many of the students raised their hands. Now here's one where we had an auditorium full of students, and some of them raised their hands and some of them didn't. We're going to pick the plural pronoun to match many, because in the context of this, we know that many hands went up, and we're referring to the many hands. And so it's there. But once again, each of the students, we take out there because it's going to be his or her hand as singular. There are some frequently asked questions around use of pronouns to replace nouns, and we want agreement. And one of these questions that comes up, it still comes up for me. I still sometimes have to ask this to myself. Do possessive pronouns require apostrophes? Well, that's no. The possessive pronoun itself, her, is already possessive. If you were to put an apostrophe, it would be redundant. We don't need the apostrophe, because in a noun, if we say the cat's tail, we know we put an apostrophe S when we're referring to the tail of the cat. But in this case, her is already possessive, so we don't use apostrophes when we are writing our possessive pronouns. A second question that's often asked is the masculine form of the pronoun a universal pronoun? And the answer to that is no. We used to refer to man and his and he as referring to all people, whether they're women, boys, girls, whoever. We could use man and it would represent everybody. We don't do that anymore. We're more likely now to use the masculine pronoun to represent a masculine noun. But when we're talking about a group, we're going to use he or she, or we're sometimes going to rewrite our sentence.
Before you jump to the next thing, I just want to pop in with an example of what you were just talking about. If you look at the Declaration of Independence, it says all men are created equal, but they're not actually referring to just men. They're referring to all people, but they use the word man to represent everyone, just like you were saying. So that's an example of it in the real world.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Oh, I wanted to also mention within that the rules are relaxing. More and more I am seeing where the officials each signed his or her name to the document is instead written, each of the officials signed their name. Because we had more than one official. We didn't know whether they were men or women, or they were a mixed up group. And we just used their. I think like Chris just said, how we have evolved our language to no longer use men as everybody. We're now going to evolve our language so that we can relax that very definite gender assignment to just there. We're just going to do that. That may be the direction that our language is moving. Another question is, can the pronoun used to stand in the place of the name of a specific individual be a matter of personal preference? More and more I'm seeing, and I think others of us are too, that people of non-binary sexual orientation, or just people who don't want to have a gender assignment, can request that when you're talking to me, please refer to me and then as he, or even if it's not obvious, or she, or it. People make that request of their fellows, and we follow that request just because it was a request made sincerely. So we see that more and more as our language becomes kind of less defined and more fluid. Another FAQ that we are using is, can a pronoun be used in place of an antecedent anytime after the antecedent is known? And I want to go up to another slide that we used before to kind of demonstrate this. In this slide, Richard went to the store for his mother, Lena. Lena made the list of items that she needed during the next week. She taped it to her front door. Richard got out of his car, walked to her front door, removed the list, and put it in his pocket. In that paragraph, we could say, we renamed Lena the list and Richard a second time. And we did that because if we keep using this flow of pronouns, the reader gets lost. Huh? What? Huh? Who's he? Huh? And the reader gets tired. So it's good to remind your reader throughout a longer paragraph and bring that pronoun back into the conversation, just so your reader knows who it is we're talking about. Finally, who makes these rules? Well, nobody. At least not anybody. I mean, maybe Chris knows, but there doesn't seem to be one arbiter of grammar. Our language is changing all the time. Dictionaries do have a statement sometimes that say what their point of view is, and so you can kind of glean from that one dictionary where it is and the evolution of language. Publications have style books, so that if you have a magazine coming out every month, the writers in that magazine are held to some standard of grammar, so that every article in the publication kind of follows the same guide. But that's a style book that's unique to the publication. And testing companies have their rules of grammar, and this is really important to you because if a testing company has the rules that they're following, you as the test taker need to make sure that those rules are followed, because that's the difference between a right answer and a wrong answer. So actually that's about the end of my presentation, but I have tacked on to the presentation several slides that I think are useful, because this is, as you choose a pronoun that will agree with your noun, your antecedent, you really kind of sometimes struggle with these. So it's important to kind of look at these charts to help organize your thinking. One of the ones I think is really helpful is those indefinite pronouns. They are, I think, hard, and this one and the one before it kind of helps you figure out what's going to always be singular and what's always going to be plural, and what might sometimes be both. So I thank you for your attention. I hope you're all staying well, and I miss you all. Thank you. Bye.